Finally sit down. Let me tell you about the time I first met your grandmother.
I used to think loneliness was something that happened to people who had no family, no friends, no purpose left in life. My name is Richard. I'm 77 years old, and the loneliest years of my life began the morning after I retired, when I realized the world could keep moving without me. I remember waking up that first Monday morning at 5:30 out of pure habit. For 43 years, I woke up at that exact time. Didn't matter if it was raining, snowing, or if I'd slept poorly the night before. My body knew what it was supposed to do. I sat on the edge of the bed waiting for my feet to touch the floor, and for a few seconds I forgot I didn't have anywhere to be. My wife, Elaine, was still asleep beside me. I walked quietly into the kitchen, made coffee, and stood there holding the mug while the house stayed completely silent. No rushing, no clock to beat, no meetings waiting for me, no one depending on me to show up. At first, it felt almost peaceful. You spend your whole life imagining retirement as some kind of reward. You think it'll feel like freedom. No alarms, no pressure, no deadlines, just long mornings, hobbies, rest, and finally having time to breathe. That's what everybody tells you. What nobody tells you is that when a man spends most of his life being needed, the silence that comes afterward can feel unbearable. I worked at the same manufacturing company from the age of 23 until I was 66. Same building, same parking lot, same men at the same lunch table for decades. I wasn't important enough to have my name on a door or anything like that, but I mattered there. People asked for my opinion. Younger workers came to me when something broke down. My phone rang all day long. I complained about it constantly at the time, but once it stopped, I realized those interruptions had become proof that I still existed somewhere outside my own head. The retirement party was nice enough. Sheet cake, plastic cups, a gold watch I never wear. Everybody shook my hand and told me I earned it. One young guy slapped me on the shoulder and said, "Enjoy the easy life, Richard." I smiled like I believed him. For the first couple months, I tried to stay busy. I fixed things around the house that didn't really need fixing, organized the garage, started taking walks after breakfast. Elaine seemed happy to have me around more. We'd eat lunch together some afternoons, and she'd tell me little stories about neighbors or people at church I barely remembered. But slowly, something strange started happening. The days began to lose their shape. When you're working, even bad days have structure. You wake up with somewhere to go, someone expecting you, problems to solve. Without that structure, time becomes slippery. One Tuesday feels exactly like Thursday. You look at the clock at 10:15 in the morning, and somehow it's still 10:22. I started sitting in the living room longer than usual, watching television I didn't care about, falling asleep in the recliner while sunlight moved slowly across the carpet. Sometimes I'd hear Elaine in the other room humming while she folded laundry, and instead of feeling comforted, I'd feel this heavy guilt I couldn't explain. Because I wasn't sad exactly. I was disappearing. That's the closest word I've found for it. When you retire, people celebrate you for a little while, but then life closes around the empty space you left behind. The company hires somebody younger. Meetings continue without you. Birthdays happen. Projects move forward. The world adjusts frighteningly fast. I remember going back to the hardware store one afternoon where I used to stop after work every Friday. Same cashier behind the counter. Same smell of sawdust and fertilizer. But this time, I walked in at noon on a Wednesday, and I noticed something for the first time. All the men in there during the middle of the day looked exactly like me. Gray-haired, slow-moving, wandering aisles without urgency, and nobody spoke to each other. It hit me then that retirement wasn't just an ending. It was a kind of quiet separation from the rhythm of the living world. My son called occasionally, my daughter too. They both had families, jobs, responsibilities, good people, loving people. But there's a difference between being loved and being needed. I didn't understand how important that difference was until old age. One evening, maybe 3 years after retirement, Elaine looked at me during dinner and asked, "What's wrong with you lately?" I remember trying to answer her and realizing I genuinely didn't know. I told her I was tired, but tired wasn't the word. The truth was, I had spent my entire adult life introducing myself through usefulness. I wasn't Richard the person. I was Richard the provider, Richard the worker, Richard the dependable one. And once those roles faded, I was left sitting alone with a man I barely knew. That realization scared me more than getting old ever did. Then Elaine got sick. It started small, forgetting appointments, repeating stories, misplacing simple things. At first we laughed about it together because that's what older couples do. You joke about memory lapses. You pretend not to notice the fear underneath them. But eventually the doctors gave it a name. And once something has a name, it becomes real. Those years changed everything. Suddenly my days had structure again, medications, appointments, cooking, helping her dress on difficult mornings, sitting beside her during long, quiet afternoons when she no longer remembered the details of stories she used to tell me by heart. I was exhausted during those years, but I was no longer lonely. That's the part people may not understand. Purpose returned to me through caretaking. I mattered again, not because I was accomplishing something impressive, but because one person still needed me close. There was one night I remember more clearly than all the others. Elaine was sitting by the bedroom window just after sunset. The room was dim except for the orange light coming through the curtains. She looked over at me very suddenly and said, "Richard, did we waste our life being busy?" I didn't answer right away because the question hurt too much. I thought about all the years we spent rushing, all the dinners eaten quickly, all the conversations postponed because I was tired from work, all the weekends spent worrying about bills and schedules and responsibilities instead of simply sitting together. And the terrible thing is, back then it all felt important. You convince yourself there will be more time later, more time to talk, more time to rest, more time to appreciate people properly. But later arrives quietly, and by the time you recognize it, entire decades are gone. Elaine passed away 6 years ago. The house became unbearably quiet after that. People visit a lot in the beginning when someone dies. They bring casseroles and flowers and gentle voices. Then slowly they return to their own lives, because that's what human beings are supposed to do. I don't blame them for it. But grief has a strange way of stretching time. Days become enormous. You can hear every clock in the house ticking. You notice sounds you ignored for years. Pipes creaking, refrigerator humming, wind against windows. And memories arrive uninvited. Sometimes I'd sit at the kitchen table long after midnight, remembering tiny things that seemed meaningless at the time. Her reading glasses left on the counter. The way she tapped her fingers during commercials. How she always asked me if I locked the back door before bed. You don't miss grand moments as much as people think. You miss ordinary routines. That's what love really becomes after enough years. Routine, presence, familiarity. Not fireworks, just someone else breathing softly in the next room while you fall asleep. After she died, I made a mistake a lot of older men make. I isolated myself. I stopped answering calls sometimes, stopped going to church regularly, stopped accepting invitations because I convinced myself people were only asking out of politeness. Loneliness feeds on pride. That's something I wish younger people understood earlier. The longer you stay isolated, the harder it becomes to return to people. You begin feeling like a guest in the world instead of part of it. Then one afternoon, my grandson visited me unexpectedly. He was 16 at the time. Tall, awkward, nervous in the way teenage boys often are. He sat across from me eating a sandwich and finally said, "Mom says you don't really talk to anybody anymore." I laughed a little and told him old men become boring company. But he looked at me very seriously and said, "I don't think people stop needing you just because you stop working." I've thought about that sentence almost every day since, because I had built my entire identity around productivity. around earning my place, around proving value through labor. But maybe human beings were never meant to measure worth that way. Maybe presence matters more than usefulness. Maybe wisdom matters. Maybe simply sitting with another person and listening carefully matters more than most of the things we spend our lives chasing. These days, my mornings are slower. I still wake up early. Some habits never leave you. I make coffee and sit by the window while the neighborhood wakes up around me. School buses, dogs barking, sprinklers clicking on. Sometimes the loneliness still visits me. At my age, it probably always will. But I don't fear it the way I used to, because I finally understand something I wish I had known decades ago. A meaningful life is not built only through achievement. It's built through connection, through attention, through allowing yourself to be present long enough for ordinary moments to matter. I used to think retirement marked the end of usefulness. Now I think it simply removes distraction. And once the noise disappears, you finally meet the person you became while you were busy surviving. Sometimes that meeting is painful, but sometimes it's necessary. So if you're listening to me tonight and you still have people who call you, people who wait for you to come home, people who ask how your day was before you fall asleep, don't rush past those moments thinking they'll always be there. One day the house grows quiet. One day your phone rings less. One day you realize the ordinary parts of life were never ordinary at all. And if you're lucky, you learn that before it's too late.